You're listening to Season 3 of That's Not How a Baby Sleeps. I'm your host, Alicia Daishon, and I'm joined by my co-host, Eleni Katsinis. We're not your average sleep consultants, no cry it out or sleep training at all for that matter.
Hi. The time change wasn't horrible for us, but, well, I guess it kind of was, actually. I forgot. So Saturday morning, I let her sleep in, which that meant going to bed late Saturday night and then waking up Sunday morning. You know what I mean? Because she just got more sleep that day, but then Sunday morning we did wake her up a little bit earlier. So she was up at like 7:30, which would have been 6:30. But then that night, she just did not go to sleep until like after 10:30. So that was annoying, but now everything's good. Like, we were trying to put her to bed. It was 9, but we're trying to put her to bed at her time would be 8. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm like, that's just, we're forcing sleep knowing what we know. I'm just like, you should be tired though. We had a really busy day. Like, I try to implement more stuff just knowing all this, and she just wasn't tired enough because it's not her bedtime. Everything's fine now. Yeah. We're back on track. Well, that's only after a couple days it's fine, but I know for some families it might take a little bit more.
Yeah, usually this is supposed to be the easy one. I was like, I got this. I'm like, I'll just wake them up at like, I guess it would be the new time, which in my head would have been like 7 on Sunday, which I think Aylin went to bed kind of late-ish on Saturday. So I was like, I'm going to wake you up at 8 o'clock, which is usually the time that they get up. But I was like, okay, it'll be earlier. I was like, that'll work for bedtime. And then I did a solo bedtime on Sunday and that didn't go well. So I don't know if that contributed to it, but they both went to bed late. It was so hard to wake them up yesterday morning. Yeah. And then because of that, they pulled it again last night. And I was just like, and then this morning, Luna's like, I'm tired. I'm like, get up.
I know. Same with Nora. And I know this is like a bridging separation thing that we've talked about before, but she loves Dogman, those Dogman comic books. Yep. So I usually don't like to read them at bedtime because they get her really excited, but she's been good. So we've been reading just only a couple chapters, and then she wants to keep reading. I'm like, nope, we're going to close it and I'll finish it to you in the morning as long as you wake up and you listen to me during the morning routine. And she has been. So we've been reading in the morning. So it's like, you know how you kind of stop and then you try to connect the next morning. It's been working for her. So I'm like, we'll keep doing this till it stops working. Then we have to pivot and do something else.
Well, that's so nice. I love that you guys use that book like technique to bridge that separation and stuff at night. Aylin, because Lane was home last night, so Lane did Luna's bedtime, and he always does the bedtime routine for Luna in our bedroom, and then once she's asleep he puts her in bed with Aylin. So I was like laying in bed with Aylin, and I kept like looking at the clock, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been in here for 30 minutes. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been almost an hour, and I just lost it. And I ended up like leaving her, and I could tell she was just wrestling beside me. And then I got up this morning, and Elaine had Luna in there within like 5 minutes of me leaving. And she wasn't upset. She didn't say anything when I left, obviously, but I was just like, I know you're still awake, but I'm leaving. I need to go work out.
Yeah.
So I left the room and I just like waited, and then he put her in there. And this morning she was like, I fell asleep all by myself last night because you left before I was asleep. I was like, I did. I assumed you were awake, but I was kind of hoping she wasn't. Yeah. And she's like, yep, I did it all by myself. I was like, well, Luna was in there. And she's like, nope, Luna wasn't in there. I fell asleep all by myself. I'm like, okay. But we've been able to do that more and more with her, because it's like we lay there, we do the snuggles and stuff, and I'm like, you're still awake. And she's like, doesn't care if we leave now, which is that's like kind of cool.
That's good. So. Yeah, Nora still needs it. I was just telling Dave, because there's nights, you know, where we get frustrated, of course, just like any family. Like, you do all the things, you know what's going on, you know why the struggle is there, and then there's just off nights. And it's just frustrating. Those nights, Dave's like, oh, she needs to sleep alone. I'm like, I know you don't mean this. We're just frustrated. And like, I don't mind laying in there with her if it is a short amount of time. But if it's taking an hour, we know why it's taking an hour. Yeah. So like, and those are times where I'm like, listen, you're going to do your thing in your room. We're right here. I'm not abandoning you, like all those things. You are getting older to where you can play alone, okay, right, for a little bit until you get more tired. And we've done that. And then she comes and she's like, I'm ready for sleep now. And then she is, and I go in there, lay with her, and she's ready. So we can't force sleep if they're not ready. But I was just telling him, I'm like, she's probably going to need physical support for at least another year. I just know it because of her temperament and her sensitivity. And I know there's like this big shift at 7. I keep hearing about this like 7-year shift of just like this independence, or just like, I don't know, just sleep too, and just the safety of it. Of course they know that they're safe. You know what I mean? Just like, I'm just telling them, I'm like, you gotta just be prepared. It might take a little bit longer, but it's okay as long as everything's going well.
I'm like, I don't mind laying with you, but when we're like pushing an hour, I'm like,
Especially when you
twitching
have
beside her.
things you got to do. I mean, we do stuff at nighttime too. Like I sometimes work in the evenings, or I do stuff for myself, or I just want to veg out. I don't want to like there any longer.
Yeah, I often I have my audiobook in my ear.
It's a good idea.
So that helps too. And sometimes I have my Kindle just with like the black light on, and I'm just like huddling under a bed. But then I'm like sitting there and I'm like into the book, and I'm like, you're still moving like beside me. Why are you still awake?
Yeah.
So yeah, it gets frustrating. But I mean, I'm chopping most of it up to the time change and stuff, because I'm like, technically they're waking up earlier, which their bodies are not used to waking up at, I guess it's 6 still, but I'm like, I just felt like it doesn't usually take this long with my kids.
Yeah, it's only Tuesday.
Lots of others. Yeah. Lots of other stuff going on. Like they're both stressed out and having a hard time with everything that's going on in our personal lives. Yeah. So yeah, I'm like, it kind of makes sense. But today, was this your idea? Yeah, it was.
Yeah, because so many people ask me about like a sleep parasomnia. Like if it's like a nightmare, or they're trying to distinguish, like, is this normal? Like, is this night terror, or is this like something else going on? Or like the confusion arousals that people talk about too. That's a big one. So I'm like, I feel like we need to do a whole podcast episode about it, because we don't have one, which I thought we did.
We don't have one. Yeah, I thought we did, but then I remembered, I'm like, oh, you put one together for me for like my Sleep Through Connection course. So we have the information in the course, but we hadn't really put it out into the world yet. So it was a good idea. We hadn't done one of these yet. Parasomnias are a group of sleep disorders characterized by abnormal motor, verbal, or behavioral events that occur during sleep or during the transitions between sleep and wakefulness. So they can occur during different stages of sleep, both during non-REM sleep and REM sleep. And they're a lot more common in children than they are adults. Although, I mean, I feel like a lot of us probably know an adult that like sleepwalks. I mean, I do. Lane was a total sleepwalker when we were younger. He doesn't drink anymore. I feel like that
probably a trigger. Yeah.
Probably a trigger for him. But yeah, we had quite a few when we first started dating. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like just getting up in the middle of the night. I'm like, you're not awake.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Super strange. But yeah, they are a lot more common in like babies, toddlers, just young children. And I think understanding kind of the timing of these things can kind of help you determine what's actually going on. But they are really common. And I know you have personal experience with them. We have very minor personal experience with them, but I know they were quite common for Nora, right?
She just had such an imbalance of sleep for a long period of time, and other triggers that were happening that we couldn't really avoid, right? So she had them for a lot of reasons, but then once we understood what was going on, and like when we dive deeper into like, what is this thing? She looks like she's like being taken over by something else. Like it's scary. And if you are listening and you know what I'm talking about, it's like a different screech, and it's a different cry, and it's a different scream. It's not your typical scream that you hear out of your child. So like, it is scary. It's very distressing for parents when you see your child going through a night terror or a sleep terror, because they're suddenly just like seem so terrified. Like they look like they're awake because their eyes could be open or closed, but they are like screaming, crying, thrashing, kicking, like maybe sitting up, making noises like rapid breathing, fast heart rate, sweating, flushed skin, tense muscles, dilated pupils. So when this is happening, like I said, their eyes are awake and they are just not responsive to accept like any comfort, which is the hardest thing, because you see your child in distress and you want to physically comfort them or hold them or do whatever you can, but they don't want that because they actually think you're a threat in that period of time that they're going through this night terror. And, you know, waking them can actually make the episode last longer, which we learned the hard way, because the first one that Nora had, I don't remember how old she was. I wish I like kept a journal. That'd be a very depressing journal. But just so I can like see like the triggers and like when it happened and why it happened and all those things. But the first one she had, we thought there was something wrong, right? So you turn on all the lights. I picked her up. She's freaking out. I'm like, what's going on? So we fully woke her up. And she used to cry in the point of like throwing up. Like she would cry so hard she would throw up. So we had brought her downstairs. You should not do this. This is the thing I'm telling you not to do. You want to, and that just made the episode last longer. So she would cry for a really, really long time. And then you would just see this kind of switch in her and like click like, whoa, I'm awake now. Like the crying is not the same cry. And then she'd always want to like chill out and watch a show because she was scared. Like when she woke up from it, she like knew, like then she was scared. When they're going through the night terror, they have no idea they're going through a night terror, which is like the only reassuring thing about this, because it looks so scary for the parent. But when they're going through it, they don't know they're going through it. So because most of the night terrors occur during non-REM sleep, it's usually the first 3 to 4 hours of the night. And then if you don't wake them, if you don't disturb them, if they're in a safe place, if they are in their crib, this like sounds mean, but you can just leave them in their crib. You don't have to go in there and pick them up. You can stand next to them gently and like offer very like gentle, it's okay, like, I'm right here. But you have to totally depend on your child's temperament. Like even my one friend, her daughter had night terrors, and she knew that if she picked her up and brought her to the toilet and she went to the bathroom, she was fine. And then she would snap out of it and go right back. I could not physically touch Nora. That's how bad it was. But other children might be receptive to comfort. And then Nora was receptive to comfort after she like transitioned to it. And then she would like lay back down and like call for me, like, mommy. And I knew like that was her calling for me when she needed me. But like I said, they have no memory of the event the next morning. They have no idea what's going on.
I was just going to say too, like, obviously you mentioned like it depends on the child and stuff. I feel like you're as a parent in most of these situations, similar to like a temper tantrum, it's like your job just to keep them safe. So
Yes.
if you have a child that's going to ram their head into a crib, maybe you'll just cradle your head a little bit to avoid that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we don't want them injuring themselves if they are quite flaily.
Exactly. And then obviously if they are in a bed, you have to make sure that they're safe, right? You have to be in there, and like that's what I used to do. I wouldn't touch her or like talk loud. I would just like be there and like offer, like I would just like be there and like
a little barrier.
If she was about to fall, I would try to catch her, or just like, but even just that, she did not like that, because she, like I said, you think that, you know, they think you're a threat. So that's obviously scary. And I remember used to being so mad at Dave because he would come in and get so loud. Like when he thinks he's being quiet and calm sometimes, but he's distressed too, because it's like middle of the night, he's half asleep. Like when I'm awake, I'm awake. I don't have that grogginess of like being half asleep, you know? So he'd like start talking loud, and she would get so mad. And I just look at him like, can you please leave? Like, I know you're trying to help, but you're making things so much worse. Like, I know this is stressful for me, but I can handle it. Like sometimes it is okay just to have the one parent, especially the calmer parent, handle it. Because even though they don't know what they're going through, a calm, co-regulated parent next to them will help, you know, with like that transition.
Oh, we did have a night terror. I think was it last?
Oh yeah, didn't you have it during summer?
We did have one during camping.
She was overtired, wasn't she?
Yeah, it was from camping, and again, like we all fell asleep in the tent, which was kind of weird. Usually with camping, we like lay with them and then get up and go like sit by the campfire. But they took forever to fall asleep, probably because they were overtired. And Luna woke up screaming, but I woke up in the tent and my contacts were still in and they were like stuck to my eyes. So I had to go out into the car and take out my contacts. And it started when I was in the car, and I came in and Lane was just flipping out, like shaking her, and like I don't know why, I just like got into the bed and like laid down beside her and like didn't really do anything. He's like, why aren't you doing anything? And I'm like,
there's nothing to do. Yeah.
Terror. There's nothing you can do. But also, sorry, campground with the screaming
They're
child.
like, what's going on?
Yeah. She's fine. Everything's fine. Nothing to see here. Just a night terror. But yeah, that was his first experience, and he did the same thing. Just panicked, shaking her. I'm like, you're making it worse.
It's scary. It's so scary if you don't know what you're going through or what's happening. But that's why I always try to explain to parents, like if they're waking up after usually 3 to 4 hours when they go to bed at night, and it's like a screeching cry that you've never heard before, it's probably a night terror. That's usually it. Yeah. And of course, too, like a lot of the triggers, like you said, are overtiredness, and sometimes you can't avoid that, right? But you try to the best you can, like consistently, you know, as you can. But just like fever, illness too, you can't always avoid that. But separation anxiety, emotional stress or conflict, disruptions in sleep schedule, certain medications, which I guess we don't have to worry about that too much with children, but you never know if they're on a different medication for something that might trigger those night terrors, migraines, or head injuries, which makes sense.
I would imagine that some type of like pain reliever, like Tylenol, Advil and stuff because it helps
them sleep.
Helps a little bit with sleep and stuff. They might be going into a deeper state of sleep because of that. So I would imagine you could probably see it with something as simple as like a pain reliever. I know we saw it. Aylin didn't really she had a couple, I want to say, but they were due to like just daytime stress and triggers that happened. Like I remember there's this one like weird guy that like came, you know, when people love to get in your baby's face, you know, you're like, go away. Yeah. Get out of my bubble. Right in her face. Like, oh my gosh, what a cute baby. And she flipped out when it happened. Aww. And then had a night terror that night. And I think we had it with like doctor's appointments and stuff too. Like she would just be like stressed out after that. And then we get like a random night terror.
Yeah.
Definitely nothing as bad as Nora with like how long they went on for, but we would get some of those random screeching wake ups but they settled pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's tough because, sometimes like with Nora's, a lot of those things correlated during that time. I know it's also age. Like there's definitely a time of age where it can happen more frequently. Like now it's not happening as much because she is outgrowing them. But if she does wake up in the middle of the night, you know how like you're sleeping and then your kid just wakes up with that gross, yucky, barking cough if you know they're getting sick. And then she kind of wakes up with that cough and she's like in the middle of a night terror a little bit, but that's when she can like accept like comfort when she's sick. So that happens for her when she's sick. And she has had surgeries when she was younger because she has extra bones, so she had to get them removed. And of course, just not sleeping well, she was nauseous from like anesthesia like that. She had night terrors with that, and we can't avoid that, obviously. So we just tried to be connected as much before bed. She slept in our bed during that time, which is great too. If your child is having a lot of night terrors, obviously talk about this, like to seek a provider's help, because there can be things going on that you might need assistance with. But I would definitely recommend co-sleeping, because if you see your child about to start like stirring or like panicking, you're right there to like physically offer that comfort. So with her surgery, because she had a cast on for a long period of time, she was in our bed. So if I saw her moving around, like I knew it was about to start, me putting my hand on her helped kind of stop it, or like kind of reset her in a way, like help transition.
Like a reset of sleep cycle.
Yep. So that helps. But with her too, now it doesn't happen as bad, but with a lot of screen time during the day or really close to bedtime really triggers her night terrors. And I heard that from a lot of other people. And you obviously know your child best, but with her surgeries or when they're sick, right, you have a lot of screen time because there's not much you can do. So I would just try to avoid it the best you can close to bedtime. Obviously we all use screens as tools, but try to do like low stimulating shows, or maybe not something so crazy in their face or super loud. And then just to like, if you are experiencing these things, right, like sicknesses, you have an emotional day, you can't stop all these things all the time. I would just try to do a very calm wind down routine before bed. Even if they're going to become a little bit overtired, like that calmness and just like that wind down period can really help with hopefully not having that night terror. But if they are having one like consistently for like a week or more, and usually it's the same time every night, especially if you're doing it at bedtime, you can wake your child up like fully before they're about to have their night terror to like help them transition to the next sleep cycle. I've heard families do this, and I'm pretty sure that's what doctors will tell you too. But of course, like I said, if this is occurring a lot and you're trying all these things that we're talking about and it's not working, I would definitely contact your provider.
Sleepwalking is really similar to these night terrors as well. I just think it has to do with them just being a little bit more mobile and actually getting out of bed and wandering around. A similar thing. In a really deep state of sleep, you're not supposed to wake them up just the same way that you're not supposed to wake them up with a night terror, and they usually happen during that first few hours after falling asleep. But again, they don't remember them the next day. And I can attest to that. My husband definitely didn't remember them the next day. Yeah. But they are more common in childhood, and they do kind of grow out of them with time. Do you have any experience with sleepwalking?
I don't, no one in my family, but I was babysitting a family that he was a sleepwalker, and it happened he actually able to get night terrors before, and then he started sleepwalking. So he is a little bit older, which I guess like some children do outgrow these things at a certain age, but it can still happen, obviously, because it happens to adults. So I feel like if it's continuing to happen, there has to be a root cause behind it, right? So to try to identify that root cause, and it is like there is a genetic component. So if it runs in your family or your partner's family, like you might have a child that has some type of sleep parasomnia. But if they are experiencing sleepwalking, I would definitely do like a gate or like an alarm, so you know that like their door is going to open, or if they're trying to get out, because you don't want them to obviously get hurt. And that's the same thing with just like making sure that they're safe, because this little boy actually got out of his room and walked out to the garage. And thankfully everything was fine, but they had to put a gate on his door, and it's like a gate that like locks, and like when they are in a sleepwalking state, I don't think they can figure out how to unlock the gate. So yeah, I would obviously just make sure that they're safe. The same thing we talked about with night terrors is like, don't fully wake them. If it's happening every single night for a long period of time, I would definitely figure out the why behind it.
And then we have confusion arousals as well. And I know that when we were putting this together, you found that they were more, I haven't seen them much for naps personally. I always saw them like early morning kind of time when they're in a lighter state of sleep. But I guess that would also kind of pair into like the daytime sleep as well, because it's during the day. Most of the time they're in a little bit of a lighter state of sleep than they would be at overnight, especially for during that first part of the night. But we had a little bit of them with Luna, nothing too crazy, but it would always be like early morning. And I think that's why we usually ask parents like, well, what time of night are these happening? And I feel like they do look a little bit similar, like waking up, crying. They are easier to wake. Like I was always able to wake her, kind of snap her out of it early morning. I don't know if you're actually supposed to do that.
It's not as intense as a night terror, I hear, correct? Because with the night terror, it's like you said, it's a different part of sleep. So it's not as intense. Like it's not hard for them to get out of it because they're not in such a deep state of sleep like you are during a night terror. So they can definitely be, like you said, they're confused. That's why it's called that. And like mumbling or disoriented or like crying. So
So, and I'm assuming, like that it would be the same thing for naps. I have definitely experienced more so like sleep inertia when waking kids from naps, and it tends to happen like after a bridge nap when we're waking them like in the middle of a deep sleep cycle where they're really, really cranky, really like just foggy and hard to kind of snap out of it. It can take like 20 minutes for them to fully like be like, okay, I'm kind of out of it, which is one of the big reasons I don't like doing bridge naps. We still do them because sometimes we have to do them just to get a kid through until bedtime, but I'm not a big fan of them because you are waking them at like 15 minutes, which is like right in the middle when they're in a nice deep state of sleep. So that can make things really tricky.
The last one is nightmares. That's another sleep experience that parents often confuse with night terrors, but nightmares occur during REM sleep, which is a stage of sleep associated with dreaming. So nightmares are really scary dreams that cause a child to actually wake up and feel scared or distressed. So that'll be the big difference, is they're actually waking up and they can talk to you and tell you, oh my gosh, I just had a nightmare. So unlike night terrors, children often remember parts of their dream and may be able to describe it to you. And this can feel, nightmares can sometimes be triggered by stressful or emotional events, and they're quite common in childhood. In fact, studies suggest that 10 to 50% of children between ages 3 and 5 experience nightmares severe enough to wake their caregivers, and up to 40% of children under 5 may experience night terrors as well. So that's with the night terrors.
Okay.
Yeah, and I feel like the same thing like we talked about with nightmares is, there could be triggers to it. Of course, I would, depending on your child's temperament and what they're watching during the day. I mean, you can't, like you said, your daughter with being a little freaked out by somebody, you can't always avoid everything, but just making sure they're watching appropriate things. And Nora's so sensitive and she's scared of things. So she does have nightmares from time to time. And she's afraid to go to sleep sometimes because she's like, I'm going to have a bad dream. So I feel like just try to get to the root cause of like the why behind it. It's very common because their imaginations are so wild, right? Like it's such a big imagination. They're thinking of a lot of things, but also that's like fears and scary things too. And we have to remember separation is the biggest like wounding experience for children. So that's like that scary monster they think is under their bed or like in their room. Is that separation. So of course, like you guys are listening to this podcast because you probably feel more of an attachment and like based approach. But like if they are having a lot of nightmares, like for a long period of time, I would co-sleep or I would sleep in their room until they fall asleep so they can feel safe. You want to make sure they're feeling safe and not like disregarding their feelings like, oh, it's not a big deal, just go back to sleep, right? Like I would not use that type of language, just try to help them get through it to get back to sleep. And if they're open to talking about the next morning, you can always have a discussion about it. Like Nora is afraid sometimes to go to bed at night from nightmares. It doesn't happen in a little bit, but there's periods of where she's having more because of what's going on in our life, right? There's more separation going on, or maybe something scary happened recently to like a friend or even a family member and she sees that, right? And they're starting to understand more, or just like the fears around life experiences. Like as your kids get older, they learn about death and they learn about scary things and it's freaking them out. So they're afraid to go to bed at night. And I just try to talk to Nora about like really happy dreams before we go to bed to try to like put her in a positive and happy state. And that's a really great bridging separation tool anyways. Like, let's talk about our dreams and I'm going to meet you in your dream and then we'll talk about the next morning. And she does talk about her good dreams too. But I was like, so it's hard. But I don't know if you guys experience that stuff.
We do a
Yeah.
lot more lately and stuff.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law's in hospice right now, so both of the girls are kind of dealing with like the death aspect.
Yeah.
Aylin has a ton of questions. Luna doesn't fully understand, but with the death of our cat back in
Mm.
October, she gets it a little bit more, which, as sad as it is to say, it was probably kind of helpful with her processing that. It's definitely been a challenge, but we're seeing it come out in like other ways as well. But we, with the open bed policy, is like if the girls have a nightmare or anything like that, they just crawl into bed with us. Generally, they don't wake up crying. But we do get a lot of questions about like families with babies who are like, oh, my baby's like been waking up screaming, whether it's at the beginning of the night or towards like the end of the night. I think they might be having nightmares. And a lot of the time we know that like their imaginations don't really start to develop until like after 18 months or so. So generally we don't see nightmares until kind of more so into the toddler stage. If you're going through that with your baby, it's very likely that it's a confusion arousal or a night terror, as opposed to like actually having nightmares, because we don't usually see it before that point in time.
And probably just like discomfort too, right? Like I hear that with like, you know, like you said with babies, like waking up screaming. I'm like, they're probably really uncomfortable or there's something underlying going on. They're just like, no, they just hate the crib. They hate sleep. Like, I'm like, well, of course they do, because they want to be with you. And if they're away from you and they're going to wake up screaming because they want you, and if they're uncomfortable or in any way, that's a big red flag that we see, right? And we have a whole red flags episode about all that stuff. Okay.
Yeah, I can take it in the show notes below, because if you have a small baby that's waking up crying all the time, people are like, oh, it's just nightmares. I'm like, probably not. There's probably an underlying reason going on. Yeah. Maybe some parasomnias, but not necessarily like nightmares. I think just looking at what time of night these types of things are happening can really just be helpful with parents, and just understanding that you're not, which ones are okay to wake them up from and which ones are not okay to wake them up from is the biggest thing. And I mean, as you mentioned, they do tend to settle down or pass as a child gets older. And if they aren't, then we want to kind of look at why that's still happening.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to connect with us beyond the podcast. You can find me on all social media platforms at moonbay.sleep. And for more sleepy goodness, you can head over to Instagram and follow Eleni at Rooted in Sleep. Until next week, keep embracing the chaos.